Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we're speaking with a full-time coach and relationship manager for Team Boss Bodies who just turned pro at NPC Junior Nats in 2021, which you guys, we're recording this November 11th of 2021, and I believe this episode's coming out like late December. So just keep that in mind as you're listening. I usually record these well in advance, but I'm so happy to have this guest on. Welcome to the show, Jonelle Warner. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you doing?
Awesome. So happy to have you. And we've connected a bit on Instagram before recording this, and I've been extra looking forward to it and had fun prepping your episode. So before we get into it, is there a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage?
Oh, yeah. So I have like little affirmations that I will say in my head that I live like memorized. So like how I ended up memorizing them is I would write them on like a little sticky note, like put it on my phone or put them like around the house. And they were just little things like I work too hard to let nerves get the best of me. Just walk out there and act like you've already won. I'm so blessed and thankful to even be able to do this. And I try to just do that like literally right as the girl before me is going on, just to kind of like, breathe, woosah, right? Yeah. And just to kind of remember like everything that you've done to get to that moment. So that's like my main ritual. And it's literally like right before I hit the stage.
Love that. I think it's really, really cool that you do that. And have you always done that in your bodybuilding career, or did this come later?
Oh, it definitely came later. My bodybuilding career has been a lot of like ups and downs and just learning. I think a lot of people's are like that, but the mental part of things has definitely been something I not have only just focused on in my own life outside of bodybuilding for like the last like 9, 10, 11 years. I just love how the brain works. And in a past life, I would have totally went to school for psychology, not to work, but like just to learn. Yeah. So that was always like a huge thing for bodybuilding. Like I not only wanted to accomplish and conquer like the physical aspect of training and the diet and everything, but I wanted to almost mentally conquer the sport too, which I don't think you ever really fully do, but each year it gets a little better. And so that was one of those things that I kind of accomplished over time was, writing those affirmations down and realizing, these are actually like sticking, because you don't realize it off the bat. It's like 6 weeks later, you realize, oh, wow, I would have panicked getting on stage and like shook. And I got on stage and like my alter ego came out. It's like, that was a huge mental win. And was like, okay, I'm going to start doing this every show.
Yeah, I really like that. I can tell you're very committed to the inner game as well. And that's so important in this journey and having a fulfilling experience, because if we're always in our head, judging or doubting ourselves, it's going to be a negative experience compared to if we're excited and feeling proud and we can get into that calm state before we go on stage. It's so much more rewarding.
Oh yeah. And I mean, in my eyes, it's like, I worked too hard to get here. And like, how many moments have you had where you're just like crying in the middle of prep and you're like, why am I doing this? And then you like, you push through, and then like to let nerves or something like a panel of judges like freaked me out so bad that like I threw all of that away or something. And it wasn't like I was always a nervous athlete. I've been a performer my whole life and stuff. So it was just a different kind of nerves, because I mean, you're standing in a suit and the judges like whole purpose is to like critique, your symmetry and all of those things that come with the bikini criteria. So I wanted to learn to master this like head on way before I turned a pro. So I'm really glad this year is the first year I felt like I really owned myself on stage. I've always been a good poser, but this was like the year that I felt like all of those little affirmations and that mental work I've been doing really came to fruition. Outside of just turning pro, even if I like got dead last, I still would have been like, you know what? I owned it better than I ever have.
That is something I wanted to talk to you about actually, is if you had a feeling that this would be your year or if it was a surprise when you won.
It's actually a surprise. It's not that I didn't feel good. I felt so good about the package I brought. And, each show, I feel like that's a win. If you can just say that, if you're like, okay, this is my best so far. And then the next show, this is my best. So, I started this year with the Pittsburgh. I live in Pittsburgh. So I'm local to a lot of the, Pittsburgh crew, if you want to call it that. NPC Gym is here. There's just like a lot of hype here with bodybuilding. So I wanted to do that show as an NPC athlete because I've never got a chance to do it. And my friend Kiki actually was doing the pro side of things for her debut. So we kind of like prepped together, and then we did peak week together, which was really fun. But based off of my showing there, wasn't bad. It wasn't, and nothing was bad with it. It was just like, I saw so much room to improve, especially my hamstrings. Hamstrings have been my critiques for 6 years since I started competing.
Yeah.
So yeah, right. I just looked at that as like, okay, I still need to work. And I have the mindset of I'll prep as long as I have to get ready.
Yeah.
So there's no crash dieting. There's no like counting the weeks down to where you're like stressing out and like, oh my gosh, am I going to be ready? I just let my body do its thing and listen to my coach. And as like they think I'm ready, I just try to listen to that. So I had it in my head not to do junior USAs, and I like actually did not plan on doing junior nationals. I kind of just went into a reverse. My coach started carb cycling me out of the Pittsburgh, and I had a lot of traveling coming up on the coaching end of things, not just my competing career, but I had taken my first few clients to the national stages at junior USAs coming up. And I was like really focused on them and focused on that side of stuff that my head was not thinking about prep. Like in my mind, I was in prep, but I knew I didn't have a show coming up in my head until like later in the fall is what my goal was. So
wow.
I saw my coach in person 4 days out from junior USAs. I was in Florida. And again, I was traveling with Kiki for her shows and for work. Like I was doing all kinds of things back to back for like 3 weeks. Saw her in person 4 days before junior USAs. And she's like, Jonelle, why are we not doing this show? I'm like, what do you mean? And I have Casey, and then I also have Coach Jason on our team as well, both prepping me. I'm very fortunate to have both of them. And so they both were like, we need to do this. So we jumped into junior USAs 4 days out, and I ended up placing third, which is my best to date. Like I had never placed on the national circuit. So oh my gosh, Celeste, that taught me so much. I was like, whoa, like, okay. So, I mean, I take that back and I'm like, so what was different this time? It was literally, I wasn't thinking about the show. I was just following my plan. I was living my life. I wasn't stressing about anything. I just knew I had to improve, and I was willing to do that. And like my body just did some weird stuff in 2 weeks. Like it just decided it wanted to like improve even more. So after placing third, we had like, I think 5 weeks between then and junior nationals. And of course, Casey, Jason, they're like, let's do it. I had never trained harder in my life. I've never, dieted harder. I've never peaked harder in my life, but it was super cool. I stepped on stage and just felt like everything kind of clicked. But again, just based on the trajectory of how the year was going, it was kind of just like, I knew I needed to keep improving, and I was just willing to do that. I didn't think it was going to happen after 2 shows. And the way I looked like from Pittsburgh until junior nationals was so crazy to me that I was able to do that. So I didn't have any feelings of like, oh, this is it. It felt good. And all the vibes are there. But I was just like, just go out there like you always do your best. And then it's back to the drawing board, whether you win or lose.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yes. That's something my coach always says. He's like, no matter what the outcome of a show, everyone does the same thing, right? You just go back and you make a new game plan and you improve.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that, because you ended up winning and you had come a long way, but you just mentioned that you had never dieted or peaked harder in your life. So can you describe the difference between that maybe prep or peak compared to previous ones?
Sure. So I kind of think of it, in my head, I think of it as like this threshold that you pass and that you go through when you're trying to get to that next level of conditioning. And this is where I think even as a coach, like a lot of athletes will get stuck. They'll get stuck right here. They look great, but like there's still something like they need to tighten up a little bit more. And it's like, well, what do we have to do to get there? And sometimes it's just little minor tweaks, but it's just enough that it pushes things over the edge. So for me, Jason got with me in person for in-person training on my leg days. And we hammered away at that high glute and high hamstring harder than, oh my gosh, I was crying leaving some of those sessions. I felt like I wanted to puke. It wasn't a lot of weight. It was that time under tension, it was, he would have me hold my stiff leg deadlifts for 3-4 seconds. And then he'd have me do 10 slow, 10 fast. And I'm holding like a 30-40 pound fixed barbell. I'm like, what is happening?
That's amazing.
Yeah, we really like tore my muscles down and trained differently than I've ever done. And I feel like that shock stimulus was something that my body needed. Not that I wasn't pushing myself, but it was like when I was at that failure point, he was there to continue pushing me, spot me, help me with the negatives, and just get me past that threshold. Like I was saying, and the diet, same thing, like the peaking, we go through a depletion phase for peak week. And we've always had to deplete me, but this was like a total different ball game. But then we also filled me out harder than I've ever been filled out. Like I ate 350 grams of carbs going into my junior national show. I was like, what?
Wow.
So it was a combination of a lot of different, strategies that we put together that may kind of sound unorthodox saying out loud, but it like was it married into something really, really good for me. And my body just responded so well.
Yeah, you really looked amazing. You were like, you nailed your conditioning and you had your fullness. Like it was awesome.
Yeah, thanks. It was so cool to still even look at that picture and be like, whoa, like we actually did it. Because I can look lean, but that fullness part of things is like what makes bikini hard,
Exactly. So I really like how you were willing to take it to the next level. And part of that was training with a trainer to help you or support you and push you. Did your training change at all as you were getting closer to peaking, like, and you were depleting? Like, were you pulling back on your training intensity or were you keeping it?
We were keeping the training intensity for sure. But I think the most important thing to note was that like people can hear train intense and they might just think like we're throwing weight around or lots and lots of volume. And it wasn't like that. Again, it was just that time under tension that was so intense. Again, like the shocking it of the 10 fast and then 10 slow, and then, pausing at the bottom when it's like your deadlifts or you're squatting, holding it at the top for your hip thrusts. And so the weight might have had to come down even more going into peak week, but we kept that intensity going. In fact, I remember being like 4 days out from junior nationals and Jason's like, okay, this is our last leg day before it's go time. And he's like, we're going to give it all we've got. We're going to keep make sure that we focus on not creating any injuries or anything like that. But we focused on literally that high hamstring area and the lines and detail work in my quads, connecting to your hamstrings and just those little things. But nothing changed as far as like intensity wise. Like we didn't all of a sudden start doing just like 4 sets of 18 and that's it, or just cables. We kept the same machines, we kept the same type of workout routine. And based on how I was feeling, he would adjust the weight or anything really. If he was like, and you're done, I wanted to get a couple more reps in you, but you're maxed. You know what I mean? As long as we pushed to that failure, we were there. We were golden.
So what are some of the exercises or what were some of your favorite things that you did to train for those details?
Sure. So for my quads, and this is just for me, that overall balance, I'm not an athlete that has like over dominant quads, over dominant glutes, over dominant hamstrings, which makes it a good thing because I can kind of equally grow them. But I really needed to focus on actually growing them and detailing them and making them balanced. And so in my front pose, he on my leg extensions really had me focus on pulling my toes back and squeezing really hard at the top. Like once you felt like you were squeezing at the top, he had you squeeze even more. And then like really making sure that you felt it all the way almost up into like your top of your hips almost in your quads. But that's what really got that nice line from the bottom of your knee, all the way up into your hips in your front pose that I never really got to dial in. And then for the hamstrings, it was like an elevated stiff leg deadlift. So my entire feet were elevated on blocks. or bench or 25-pound plates. He would do different variations of height for that ultimate stretch and range of motion. I also have good flexibility. So if you're someone listening that's like, doesn't have great flexibility, you might want to work on that first. But, I can go pretty far past my toes and hold it there and keep all that contraction in my high hams. But that extra range of motion, getting like really high up there, helped me dial in my tie-ins much better. Single leg hamstring curls to help balance out my left and right. I had just a slight imbalance in my left to right, like my left one wasn't as tight. So he really focused on that as well. But just little stuff, 1.25 reps for hip thrusts. Those were really good too, to help with that glute diamond. My upper glutes, my dominant part of my glutes. So to not get that to activated things is tough. So we really just focused on bringing that tension to that high hamstring and the glute area, that under part of your glutes.
Amazing. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's probably people in positions like you or who are curious, like, how can I make the most of the work that I'm doing? Not just go through the motions, but really,
Sure.
The details do matter in everything with bodybuilding, especially when it's hairs separating the winners from, who's maybe next in line or who may never compete again.
Right.
So it's really cool to just hear how you approach that. And I think competitors are real athletes, and some people maybe don't think of themselves as athletes, but we train, we focus every single day. That's what we do. And you said that you switched up your nutrition a bit, your supplementation, all that. So when it came time to prep for this show, was your coach's goal to have you go pro? Like, was that the ultimate goal, or were you guys just kind of going in like, we'll see what happens?
So Casey has always been amazing at telling me that I have what it took to go pro. She saw something in me in 2017 that, I really didn't even know what the national stage was at that time. And she was like, I knew regionals pretty well. I didn't know the national circuit as much. And she was the one like starting to guide me through that. And she's like, oh, you absolutely have what it takes to go pro, not just physically, but mentally. So it might take time, but let's work at it. So she would help me point out parts of my body that she noticed that were pro level quality, one being my shape. I have a natural X frame, and just like different things that I didn't notice about myself. And so she has always been very positive in telling me that I have what it takes to turn pro. She never promised a pro card at any show, but she said, you absolutely have what it takes. Let's just keep working at it and going back to the drawing board. And mine was also an overall look thing. I have red hair, so it was making sure that I needed to bring the right hair, the right suit, the right glam, so it wasn't all clashing. And Jason absolutely was like, you have so much potential here. Let's do this. So they definitely wanted me going into it thinking that I could turn pro, but with a realistic mindset that everyone there you could fight for to turn pro. So it's about what you're bringing, and we're going to be proud of that. And we know that if you do lose, we absolutely left no stone unturned. And I can lose completely fair with that, because we all work hard. And, if we win, then that's great, because we know we worked our butt to get here. So I went into it, thinking like, let's do this. I could seriously turn pro here. And I also have to just like shout out the promoter of the show, because that was the coolest. I think it was Sandy Williamson's first show. And the stage, the way they treated us was such a vibe that was like so helpful too on stage. So wow. I think everything just came together.
That's cool. What did they do that was so special?
The backstage was, it was large enough that everybody wasn't on top of each other. The lights, the entrance, like I felt like it was a mini Olympia. Like you got to walk out through the middle if you were top 5 at the night show to do your routine. The stage was huge. Like it wasn't just like a small little thing that they set up. Like they really did it up big. The goodie bags were good for everyone. They just treated the athletes so great. Like I felt like we were already all pros, even though this was the national circuit. So it was really cool. And that definitely like sets a tone for the athletes. It's like, oh, I can get down with this. Let's go.
Oh, now that's interesting. I didn't know that so backstage were they saying like, okay, these are the girls who the judges say are in the top 5 and that's that. And then you go, wow. Did they tell you your other placings or just, here you go, top 5?
Well, Well, yeah, like they had at finals, they had all of the top 5 girls like come out through the center with like smoke machines and stuff like that, kind of like what they do for the Olympia. And then you did your routine, you went off to the sideline, they called out all the top 5 winners. And then like they obviously did the overalls like they were for everything else. But it was just so cool how like, like I said, I've only ever seen people walk through the middle of the stage with smoke machines and all the lights when I was at the Olympia or watching the Olympia. So to be able to do that, like it was so cool. I mean, you walked out and you're staring the judges right in the face. There's like smoke machines everywhere and like
So
the music. Cool. You're just like, what? It was just such a cool show to turn pro at.
I think that's awesome. I can imagine though, like I don't know, you're like in that top call out, maybe you're thinking you might crack top 5 and then they come back, they're like, so you'll be walking from the side. And I'd be like, oh no. But I understand like the allure of it because the show production value is awesome. And it's such a great like experience for those of you who did earn that top 5.
Yeah, it was really cool. And on the same respect, like there are some people, like I took my first wellness athlete to nationals where she broke top 5, but after prejudging, we didn't really know where she landed. So it's not like we went into it thinking you didn't do well, but going into finals, you know, we brought it tight. We kept things tight. And I get off stage and turn pro. She comes running up to me. She's like, Jonelle, I just made top 5. And I was like, what?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So then like we run back to her little area, we get her ready, and then she gets the whole experience too. She gets to walk out and place top 5 at her first national show in the wellness division, which is growing right after I turned pro. So like my endorphins at this point, Celeste, were like,
there's no limit.
They were running. They were running. So it was just really cool.
Oh, that is so cool. And I want to talk to you more about your journey through bodybuilding, but you brought something up that I'm not going to breeze past, which is that you have red hair. And like, this is something I was like, I have to talk to her about it because I haven't had, I don't know that I've had, well, I'm sure maybe 1 or 2, but I don't know that I've had someone who's rocking red hair. So I want to know, some girls get worried that they can't do that. They can't wear the red hair on stage. They dye it, they change it, whatever. How'd you find the right look for you and what kept you confident in keeping your hair red?
So I have been a redhead for since I turned like 20 and I'm almost 30, I'm 28. So I've had it for a few years. And I just love it short and curled and just that vintagey old Hollywood vibe. So I've been rocking that for a while, even like pre ever stepping on stage. But something that I've said forever is that I kind of want to bring some of that like classic vintagey, just old glam to the stage. And it's kind of been something I've always wanted to do, meaning like don't lose myself in the midst of trying to fit a mold. So like, how do I take that to the stage, but refine it to still fit the criteria? Like I'm fine with fitting a criteria, but I'm not fine with going and like growing my hair out and changing it to dark just because I feel like that's what I should do. So it took me a while to figure out the right shade. I mean, if you go back through and looked up any of my photos on NPC News Online, you'll see a wide array of different shades of red. And so it took me a while to figure it out, but this was the first time I wore a wig this year. And I had Ashley Jonelle, my posing coach who owns Main Secrets Beauty. She like disclosed to me in April before she even launched that she's like, girl, why don't I get you your wig? Because I told her I don't know what I'm going to do with my hair. I'm so tired of trying to figure this out, but I need to. And she's like, we can custom make it where we keep the red, but we add a little bit more brown to it so it's not clashing with your tan. And so her, Casey, and myself, we start like sending all these like Google images back and forth of different shades of red. We pulled up photos of other redheaded pros. So like Margaret Nahr, she's no longer on the circuit anymore, but she did really well. Her. Yeah. Awesome. And then Samantha. So again, we have a few that have hit the circuit that not really are active anymore, but we know that there was a time that few of them did well. So we've relied on that to kind of pull shades from there. So no joke, my wig has like 4 or 5 different colors in it.
Wow.
To make it what it is. Yeah. And It's like, we call her Valentina because when she goes on, something happens to my ego where I'm like, oh, it's stage time.
That's awesome. I love that it's Valentina. Where did that come from?
Honestly, we don't even know. We were like, we're going to name her. And a bunch of us were like in the car on our way back from the Pittsburgh. And I was like, guys, this is like a total vibe with this wig, because I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. You know, it's not very common to even really talk about wigs much.
Yeah.
You know, so I definitely wanted to be like an advocate for not only redheads, but people in general who are like trying to keep to themselves, but also try to fit a mold, meaning like, I don't want to change my personality and what makes me me. So when that wig comes off, I have the short, red, curly vintage hair, but when that wig goes on, it's still like classic curled. It's a deep side part and it's still red. And I'll wear like a maroon lip. And I think also just like your personality, if that's really who you are, will kind of personify that. So like my posing and everything is, to me, I try to think very classic. And so I think that emulated really well this last time on stage. And so it's been a journey, but this was the first year that I nailed my whole look. And I felt so good in it.
Wow. Let's talk about wearing wigs on stage. I mean, what is that feeling like? What's the prep to wear a wig? How do you find the right wig?
So the right wig is like a huge thing. You know, you don't want to skimp out. I mean, there have been girls who have turned pro. Casey turned pro in a wig and it was like $20 from Amazon. So it's not that it can't happen. Yes, she did. So it's so funny how many people don't realize like there are wigs on stage, but that's just it. If it's done right and you know how to apply it right, it can look really, really natural. So it's actually not that hard. I have a lace front wig. And Ashley Jonelle came to like 2 of my shows to do it for me, to show me how to do it. You use 2 different products. It's like a got to be glued freezing spray and like a hardening gel. And that's how you adhere it to your scalp. And then the lace literally will blend into your foundation. So you just use a beauty blender to kind of like blend the top in. So you don't see any lines. This is also a natural wig where it has the part. So you can flip it, you can color it, you can style it. The quality of the hair is really good. So I mean, total putting it on takes me literally like 8 minutes. Styling it, because it's already kind of pre-curled and I just want it to look polished, could take anywhere from like 25 minutes to 35 minutes, just depending on how long I'm curling it or fiddling with it. And so not only did it save me time, but now I don't have to do anything with my real hair. I can just
seriously
leave it go. And I don't have to spend money on extensions. It's a buy once, cry once kind of a thing. You know, I spent, $500 on this wig, but it's custom to my head. It has the perfect shades of red that like no one else is going to go out and buy. I don't care how much they try. Like there's no way they're custom making that wig unless Ashley Jonelle reproduces it. It's the same length. It's cut for me. It's styled the right way. And so it's part of my competition arsenal. So it's kind of like knowing what kind of athlete you are, and working and researching and investing in that. Same thing with shoes. Like if you know there's a certain shoe that you like, you're going to invest in that, right? Same with makeup. If there's a certain lipstick you like, that's part of your arsenal. And your suit, the suit that makes you stand out on stage. As a pro, it's not just constantly coming back with different suit colors. It's like kind of finding your look and your signature and keeping it. Look at Ashley Kay. She goes between green and red and that's it. She doesn't come on stage randomly with like purple. You know what I mean? It's that she knows it works and she keeps to it. Laura Lee, same thing, same suit all year round, Right. So figuring out the part of your arsenal that you need is so important, I think, as an athlete. And for me, I just needed a wig. So I'm so pro wig. Like I said, Ashley Jonelle was great with helping me with that. So I would recommend anyone to her. And I know that a lot of pros have started to use her as well. So
I'm just so amazed that it's a wig. Like you literally cannot tell it. You even have like the little, like, baby hairs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess that's the right one. I was like, there's no way this is actually, because I was looking at a picture. I'm like, damn, her hair, like she must be wearing extensions or something, but it doesn't look like it's the same color. And now I know why. That is, it's just a beautifully done and obviously a good investment because it worked for you and it works for you. So that's awesome.
Tape and extensions can be like $275 for a bundle. And like every girl most likely needs like 2 or 3 bundles, right? And that's like after tip, after everything else, it's close to $500. So it's like you do that every show, that adds up way more than one wig is going to do. And it's something that like, you can literally custom whatever color you want. So like if the judges are like, I think you would be better off with the brown hair and you have blonde, don't go dye your hair unless you want to. Invest in a really good wig and work the mold, but not change who you are like entirely just because like every single day. You're only on stage once every so often. So you still have to live with yourself every other day outside of that.
Yes.
So it's great because now you have like your stage self and you have like your off stage self.
And I love that you didn't compromise maybe compromise not the right word, but you didn't change. You mentioned this earlier, who you are for the sake of even the stage look. Like you could have easily invested in a brown hair wig that perfectly matched like the top 3 Olympians, but you still maintain like your look and personality. And I think that is probably also, I would imagine, makes you more confident on stage because you actually feel like yourself.
Exactly. Like I didn't feel not me. It was like I said, Valentina comes out, she's like an ego, you get that confidence and it's like, okay. But in all reality, like deep down inside, I felt like it was just me standing up there. Same thing when I actually turned pro, like when I get really excited, I'll like start to giggle. So like all my pictures are of me just like giggling like a little, like a girl. And I was just like laughing. And I don't honestly think I would have been able to even personify like that true joy if I didn't feel like me on stage,
Yeah, absolutely.
So everything just felt very raw and organic at Junior Nationals. And if I was going to turn pro, I always said it's going to happen when it's meant to happen. And not only when it's meant to happen, but it's going to be so perfect because it was meant to happen then. It wasn't forced. It wasn't like obsessing over it. And it just was good. I couldn't complain.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And, this is something I really appreciate about you is no matter what season you're in or how long something takes, you embrace who you are and you embrace all the seasons despite how your body changes or looks. And you're committed to doing whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And I think that's really, really awesome. And I want you to tell us more about your journey because you went from competing for a few years in a row to then taking time off from 2019 to 2021 when you stepped on stage again and went for your pro card, had a really successful season. What was happening between 2019 and 2021 for you? I know there's a lot going on, but I mean for you.
Yeah. So for me, it was, I knew that there were certain parts of my physique that needed to change that weren't going to change with just back-to-back shows and short off seasons. I just don't have that kind of a body that is like going to just soak up muscle really easily. It just doesn't do that. I don't want to say I'm a hard gainer, but I'm just someone that needs to really intentionally plan out what her next move is before she steps on stage or before I enter prep. And not to mention too, I try to look at everything as a whole. It's not just getting on stage and this obsessive need to like be on stage. There's a lot of other things I like to try to line up. I like to save away money. I like to make a little competition fund, put a little envelope away, just label it competition. And then throughout the year, I would throw money in that, so that when I started my competition season this year, I wasn't like stressed about money, which was, oh my gosh, I cannot even begin to tell you how huge that was, because the number one thing I hear about with athletes all the time is talking about how much this is such a financial burden in some way or form, whether it be the cost of the show or just the cost of your food every week. So I was like, how do we make this less of a stress, So that long off season really helped me build like a solid like blanket under me when it came to finances. So that's like one area that I think, I wanted to touch on that not many athletes might touch on. But then the training aspect of things, again, working really hard just to progressively overload with my body, and not just necessarily strength, but looking at my body and going, what needs to improve? For me, it was always hamstrings and just overall leg balance. I'm very upper body dominant. I have no problem widening my back, tightening my core, getting that lean, or anything with my upper body. It was just strictly focusing on my legs. And I wanted to give myself time to do that. And then I didn't have to stress when life happened, like if you got sick for a week, you're not like, oh, well, like my off season's ending in like 3 weeks. It was just like, nope, no stressing, just extend the off season if I needed to is fine.
Yes.
I just have like an addiction to improving, not an addiction to the stage. I have zero desire for complacency or to continue to get on stage just in quotes because I have a goal. Like it literally, I don't need the stage to eat healthy. I don't need the stage to like want to focus on my mindset. I don't need the stage to want to improve my body. For that time period of me being off, it wasn't just thinking like, how am I going to improve for the stage? It's like, how can I improve my body for all year, every year, so that like I love it no matter what. And again, the mental part of things. So I was really focusing on how to bring a pro mindset, which people can talk about when it comes to handling adversity or handling diet, nutrition. But I really wanted to do that in the sense of what it means like to be a pro, and being in the spotlight, how to accept praise and rejection humbly. Just a lot of things that I really wanted to dive into so that when I turned pro, I wasn't trying to backpedal going, oh, well, I have not prepared for what it actually means now to be at this level. And so even now, like going on the pro circuit, like if I do well and things blow up, it's like, I want to be prepared for that next level. So each time I take an long off season, it's always trying to mentally get grounded on what's ahead of me. And there's no way to do that perfectly, but at least you can kind of do some mental preparation. I journal a lot. I meditate and take at least 15, 20 minutes in the morning before I pick up my phone or do anything, to just like ground myself. And again, journaling is huge, like word vomit, get it out on paper. So it's not like in your head. And I think a lot of those habits that I created in that long off season before 2021 is like what helped me have a successful prep. I also started to pinpoint things I wanted to do the next prep. So even though I wasn't in prep, I was like, what do I want to do differently next time? And one thing I want to do is I was like, I am so tired of obsessing over the weeks. So I stopped, and I no longer count weeks, and I no longer set show dates. My coaches will set show dates and count weeks, but I will no longer bug them or care if I'm going to be ready or yada, yada, yada. I know that they aren't going to put me on stage not ready. So if I'm executing everything, there should be no problem. So I just took all the variables that would cause stress out of it. Yes. I stopped staring at myself at every mirror. Like, I don't want to go past every mirror and do like an ab check after everything like you eat or do. Like, we become so obsessed with those everyday things. Like, I took that totally away. If I couldn't go to the gym in a sports bra and not stare at myself, and to the point where I was like, oh, I still need to lose here, I still need to lose there, and my shoulders aren't big enough, then I would cover up until I got to a point where I could look at myself in the gym and be happy with where I'm at and understand that each day is a stepping stone in your prep, and how I look now is not how you're going to look on stage. And so it was like preparing all those little things that I wanted to take into prep with me. So when I started prep I ended 2020 and started prep December 28th. So I prepped basically from then on until after Junior Nationals. And when I started, I felt ready, like financially ready. I had like my mental plan in place on how I was going to try to combat some of the obsessive compulsive nature of prep in our heads. And I just was like, we're going to see how this goes, and I'll take more notes and I will adjust and adapt accordingly. And so when I say like everything just kind of like married together really well this year, it really did. But that's what I was doing in that year, leading up to this competition year, is like training my body, training my mind, training my spirit, training all of the things, and enjoying life at the same time, like traveling with my man, hanging out with my mom. My mom and I are very close, traveling to visit friends, and not feeling guilty or shameful about it. So it was a good time in my life.
Let's just rewind like 2 minutes and listen to all of that again, because that was awesome, man. I knew we would connect and vibe and like we speak each other's language, but that was huge. And I'm so happy you just promoted all of that. And I'm going to highlight a couple things that stood out to me, which is really just going to summarize what you said. So 1, if you're body checking all the time, let's get a handle on it. Number 2, Don't be worried or ashamed of going out, traveling, seeing friends, enjoying and living your life. And number 3, probably one of my favorites, is remove the timeline. I cannot tell you how many times I believe people have mental stress in this sport because of timelines and pressure. That is only created by a singular date on the calendar that has literally no bearing on you as an athlete. It's not Judgment Day, but we make it Judgment Day, right?
Right.
Rather than saying, I will be the judge or my coach will be the judge of when I step on that stage. No, everything that happens between now and then is habit. It's up to me. It's my life. I'm going to do it anyway. Removing the stress. This is like your key. And I love that. And you have to be aware, and you have to go through things like the journaling, the meditation, taking time for yourself in the morning, not instantly checking your phone all the time. Live more presently with yourself and grounded so you can identify what's actually bringing stress and pressure. And then you can say, here's what I'm committed to removing. So my intentions for my next prep or my next improvement season are actually growth oriented, not the same old thing over and over and getting the same old results.
Yeah. I can like seriously tell so much about an athlete or a person in this sport by like one simple statement. And it's usually when they're in reverse or they're usually in off season and they say, I just don't have the motivation because with prep, there was a goal and now I have no goals. I can't tell you how much that irks me inside, because like you should always have a goal for yourself of improving in some way, shape, or form. The fact that you wrapped every single thing in your life around one, like you said, singular date on the calendar, and now after that, you absolutely have no motivation. Like that shows me like the mental growth like we need to start going on before you ever step on stage again. You know, like, there's absolutely no reason to not be just as excited about preparing for your next show as you are preparing for your first one or your second or your current one. It's like, there's always a goal, and it doesn't have to just be strength. If you are a mental stressed basket case, your entire prep, your number one goal in off season should be, how do I not be that next year? Yes, thank you. So there's your goal right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like if we're honest, like some people don't want to hear that, or even us sometimes at a certain point, we don't want to hear that. Like I didn't want to tell myself like, wow, Jonelle, you're going to have to take some time off stage to really get a grip on this mental thing. Nobody wants to hear that. But like, you know what? It's so worth it because you can keep doing this prep thing over and over and over again and actually get worse. Or you can like get better.
Exactly. Well, thank you for saying it. Makes my job easier. I don't have to sell as hard. I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Yeah, but you are an actual representation of this as well, which I can appreciate. And obviously, your actions speak and your results speak for you and for the commitments that you've made. And I really love that you bring that perspective and philosophy to your journey. And I want to talk to you about your life as a coach. But before we do that, I'd like to know how your viewpoint on competing has evolved over the years, if at all.
My viewpoint as in like what sense?
Maybe how you approach it or how you want others to approach it, or the way the physiques look or the industry, those types of things.
So I think naturally, just because the sport of bodybuilding, you're going to evolve, right? So, you know, bikini now is definitely not what it was. But, you know, being okay with that, I think it's like, you know, adjusting and adapting is a good thing I like to go on. Because yes, your viewpoint is going to change, but I try to have a very neutral outlook on a lot of things and not take stuff so emotional, because like every sport, things are going to change. There may be, you know, decisions or actions or shows that you like better than others. There's might be a lot of things that make you feel some kind of way about the industry, but if you really actually love this sport, like I love this sport. Like I don't have to go on Instagram and be loud about it. I just, like you said, I will just do it and do things that it might be different than the average because I do love it. And it comes from that place. And And because I love it, it's like, I really don't care what happens. Like in the other aspects of stuff, it's like, I can remove myself or insert myself as much as you want in this industry. I don't know how many of the listeners out there are like, familiar with like the old school bodybuilders or even yourself. But, when I say I love bodybuilding, I even love like the bodybuilders and the men's side of things. And Dorian Yates was a good one who would come out for his shows and then he would literally disappear. You would just like never see him. It was like, he just went and improved and came back and would like annihilate anyone on stage because he was just so in tune with how much he loved the sport and what he was doing and not what everyone else was doing, that I don't think, his viewpoint stayed very constant. So for me, I try to take some of that similar thing to mind. And, I really love the sport and I just love every part of it. So as it evolves, I enjoy watching bikini evolve to what it is. I enjoyed watching them add wellness just because bikini was evolving kind of all over the place, right? And, the different bodies that come that they choose, the different Olympia winners over the years, like regardless of what I think, it's like, my viewpoint on everything is very kind of neutral and just like, it is what it is. And I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope so.
No, it did. It really did. And I'm so glad you brought it up that you are a true advocate and lover of the sport as a whole. And I think that's really awesome. And you can learn so much from all the divisions and all the competitors.
You totally can.
It speaks to your classic nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I know. If the shoe fits.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually now curious where that came from for you, like the love of having that classic look and portraying that.
I honestly don't know. There wasn't a moment that I was like, oh, that just like, I just gravitated towards those things. The first time I ever saw Breakfast in Tiffany's, I was like, okay, why am I living in this era? Like, what the heck? I literally was like, thought I was in the wrong line in heaven for the wrong era. Like, what is going on? Like, why am I not? I literally had no idea that time period really existed. In school, you just go over American history. I didn't really go over the era as much. So I do remember like seeing those types of movies and even the 7-Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe, like that one's like, I was just like, what? Wait, Marilyn Monroe wasn't just like a picture that everybody posts about. She was like an actual thing, an entity. Like, and I just loved that more simple time period. And I'm not even talking just a political thing. I'm not talking in that. I'm talking like the way they dressed, the way that they looked at life. Technology wasn't huge. They focused on time and family and dinners around the table. There wasn't Grubhub. It was just a simpler, more intimate time. And I think I just gravitated towards that. I loved the makeup. My first job was cosmetology, and I loved the hair and the makeup from that era. So I think it just evolved over time. And it kind of fit my personality. I didn't have to force it. It was just something that I would kind of embody. And people always said, like, you remind me of someone from like the 60s or the 50s. And then it just kind of stuck.
Totally. No, I think that's awesome. And yeah, it's the look. It's okay that you like the look from that time. People will say what they want or think what they want, but it's really cool. And I love that you just embrace it and you don't try to be like anybody else or try to fit in mold. You're always just you. And that's really, really beautiful.
It was actually funny that my mom the other day was like, Jonelle, do you see bell bottoms are coming back in? And I was like, oh, mom, don't you know, skinny jeans and will always be in fashion for me, mom. Regardless of like,
I can't get behind the bell bottom.
I just like, that's just not me. If someone sees me wearing bell bottoms, they're going to be like, what on earth?
100%. I think someone would think that, like, first of all, seeing me in jeans, period. Okay, people will be like,
right.
What the hell's happening?
Yeah. What is going on?
Other girls look fantastic in them. I'm like, wow, like I see why they're coming back. And then I put them on and I look like a clown. So yeah,
I can't rock it. My body doesn't look good in it either. Like I'm 5'4". I look taller
exactly,
in my pictures, but I'm only 5'4". I need someone who's like 5'7" with legs for days to rock the bell bottoms.
Exactly. I'm like, that is not happening. I've got these thick ass legs. You think that they just, it's not gonna happen. But to each their own.
Yes.
Okay. When did you decide to become a coach?
So I started with Boss Bodies as an athlete in 2017. I had ran the regional circuit for a while here in Pittsburgh. And then finally, one of the head judges here was like, I am tired of seeing you on the stage. Could you just finally move up? And I was like, move up? He's like, to nationals. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, I was just so, I don't know what you're talking about. I just planned on coming back to this exact show every year. And so he told me a little bit about nationals, and my boyfriend and I, my current boyfriend still, he was helping me through a lot of the shows because I didn't know anything. And he was a bodybuilder back when he was in his 20s. So he was just taking some knowledge that he knew and the stuff that I knew from like the nutrition and training certifications I was getting at the time. And we were just like putting it together. So once I knew I was going to the national level, I found Casey. And so I started as an athlete with her. And once I started going to these shows with her, like I said, I was working as a cosmetologist, my first job. And I've always done my own makeup for my shows and my own hair. So I brought all my stuff with me, like, and I'm talking like full blown, like makeup kit, hair kit. Like I just took this to every show. And I met the team for the first time at my first national show with Casey. And this was one of those moments we hired like a company to do like the entire group of girls, hair and makeup. And like, I don't know if they just weren't well versed with competition makeup or what, but everyone's hair didn't turn out very well. Everyone's makeup didn't turn out very well. And we had like crying athletes. We had very hysterical, upset girls. And I had this whole kit with me. So I started doing like touch-up stuff, like just trying to fix it, trying to just basically put Band-Aids on what was done, but like at least get the girls happy. So Casey had pulled me aside afterwards, after she had saw that happen a few times at different shows. And she's like, I'm thinking of making this more, my national shows, like a one-stop shop for girls. Like our tanning's in-house, our makeup is in-house, our glam is in-house, so that the girls aren't running around to different hotels and feeling stressed. She's like, what do you think about like being a glam girl and like starting this with me? So I started as that, started traveling with the team, doing hair and makeup. Wow. And as Boss Body, yeah, that's how I started. So as we started growing the team and expanding, Casey kind of started learning that I have been in school for a few years now on nutrition and training and dieting. I went to Clean Health and Fitness Institute. So they are online certifications, but I have like a bunch of them through that company because I just love them. Nice. And so she like found out that I was going through all of this, and we had a few coaches decide to step away from coaching in general. And she called me up and was like, listen, I need you to like, what do I have to do? What do I have to pay you to go full time with me? And I was like, what? I had always worked multiple jobs. So at this point I was doing like in-person training at a local gym. I was doing cosmetology, cutting hair, and then traveling with the team, doing glam. I was doing all the things. She's like, I just want you solely working with Boss Bodies. So I started coaching. I basically was given a platform finally to take what I've been learning, because I'd always wanted to coach, but I'm also not that person that's going to like beg people. Like, I'm not going to do that. I want everything to be organic. And I kind of wanted someone to see my value and want that. And Casey has just always seen like my value ever since I'm an athlete. And then as like a cosmetologist and what I could bring to the table there. And then she saw not just like my schooling and my, education, but she saw me and my personality and how much I cared about people. And I basically just took my service background from hair and turned it into coaching. And I've been doing it ever since. So it's my full-time gig now. And that evolved over time when Casey started realizing, oh, you're like good at problem solving and like talking to people. Like, do you want to help manage the team? So again, I just really worked my way up in the company. And now, it's like me and Casey, and we have a bunch of other coaches, but we're focused on quality versus quantity. So we're not going to be hiring, we don't have 30 coaches. We don't have 600 plus athletes. We have a small knit crew and a small knit group of ladies and men, a few men who just, are just such good people inside and out. And so from a coaching perspective, I'm just so fulfilled in that, because I'm able to really be the kind of coach that I want. Casey promotes that, there's nothing cookie cutter. I design all my own training plans because I like it. I manage all of my girls, and then I help the team and the other girls with things like that as well. So it's been an evolution, Celeste.
Yes, a beautiful one. And I don't want to push any buttons, but I'm going to ask you. And if you don't feel comfortable answering, you just say no, thanks. How does it feel? Because I know when you're a coach and you're so committed to helping people, and you've also done glam for them, and you connect with these people, and you're managing as well with the staff and with clients. How does it feel when people leave the team and go to other teams or coaches?
So this is what I like to look at it. When I was working in cosmetology and I was working at a hair salon, I was managing. There were always times when I would have a stylist sit me down and say, hey, I actually interviewed at a different place, and this is going to be my 2-week notice. And, I just am getting offered something better over there. And I think this is just going to match more of where I'm trying to go in life. As a manager or business owner, you're going to look at that as a couple different ways. Is that person of value to your company? And if so, how? And if not, then it's kind of bittersweet in one way or form, right? It's either a sweet thing because they weren't adding much to your business, right? Or it's a bitter thing because they were value. But regardless, people evolve and people change. So I always wanted nothing but the best for that athlete. And that is unfortunately just business. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have coaches that start at one team, or maybe start on their own, or realize that they want to try something different, or maybe their heart's calling them to start their own business, or maybe they're being offered something at a different team and they think the grass is greener on the other side, or they genuinely just want to go somewhere else. Whatever it is, that's okay. Mm-hmm. So for people to start either creating drama around it, or to think that there's all of this negative stuff, people, we either fuel the fire or we don't.
Yes.
And so something that we will always do at Boss is stay very true to what our brand is. And if any one of our girls, who's been on a, national show with us and has actually been involved in the team, we have growing pains like anything else. We're going to change, we're going to evolve, we're going to mess up, but as a team, we're always trying to make things a place where people can be heard, mess up and not be judged, whether you're a client or whether you're a staff member. So when people want to leave or people want to adjust, that's okay. To me, it's all about your action in doing so. You know what I mean? You need to sit down, you need to be honest, either whether if you're an athlete leaving a coach, don't just ghost your coach, give them the decency to tell them why you're leaving. And, is there anything that coach could improve on for someone else, or, just have a discussion. And I think coaches need to be open to their athletes being heard. Mm-hmm. And if it's a coach leaving another team, that's also okay, but don't lie about it. Don't manipulate it. Don't be vindictive about it. Just sit down with your current boss and have a conversation, and then move on, so that there's none of that bad, negative crap. Again, I don't hold much energy and emotion towards certain things. It's just be truthful, but be graceful and loving. Be loving, but be graceful and truthful, and give grace to people, but be loving and truthful while doing it. So it's whatever you choose to do, it's okay. But again, it's just the actions, I think, that are for me, that stand out.
I agree. It's so hard to be ghosted by people you care about.
Yeah.
Gosh. And it's the worst, because then you're just doing all these follow-ups and you're trying to be I don't want to be that annoying, weird
person.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm trying to get your attention, and I just need to know what's going on. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges as a coach. And for athletes who get ghosted by their coach, that's a huge stressor. So it goes both ways for sure.
It does. It's a full circle.
Yes, you're right. It's definitely about execution. And I'm really glad that you answered that question and shared such, insight on it. I want to know, from your experience working with athletes, what do you find separates champions from others?
Well, again, a lot of it is in those small daily habits, those small things. I look for word choices. There's a lot of things in our conversation, little things that they'll say. Some things that you picked up on from me is when I said like timelines, right? So a big thing for me is like, I know someone who's in it for the long haul, and I know someone who's in it just because they want to hit like check the box.
Right. Just do the show.
Right. And I hesitate to say that it's okay to just do a show only because of the nature of how intense and extreme our sport is and the negative effects that can have on someone mentally if they're just in it to do a show. This isn't like a soccer game. This is definitely way different than any other sport. And I always say, like, you wouldn't pick up ballet shoes and decide to go do a ballet show. So like the fact that people will be like, oh, I'm just going to decide to do a bikini show. It's like, and I want you to do it for me in 12 weeks. That definitely right there will tell me like, okay, this person is most likely not going to have what it takes to get it to that top level. I mean, could they evolve into that? Sure. But if you right off the gates come in with timelines and very unrealistic expectations, unhealthy mental habits around food and just in general around your day, all of those little things will tell me very quick and early on in like the evaluation process of like how far this person can go or not go. The ones that what separates it are the ones that ask like the right questions, the ones that are saying, they're not just asking the same questions week after week and your coach is just like on repeat telling you the same things. And for instance, like the scale, the ones that are like so hyper focused every single week on the scale. And no matter how many times you tell them that like, you're not worried about the scale and that the scale really does not matter, it's about a look and they still don't care, they still don't get it. It's like, that's going to be a huge separation between the pros and the amateurs. Is the pros, you gained a pound in your off season. Oh my gosh, that could be a pound of muscle. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
An amateur gains a pound in her off season and she thinks it's fat. There's a big, there's a big difference in how bodybuilders look at gaining and losing weight, at least how we should. And men are excellent at this. If you look at the men bodybuilders, they look to hit a certain weight in their off season in hopes of it being lean muscle tissue. Girls, we have this weird habit where we feel like it's okay to huddle between 2-3 pounds above stage weight and then make all these gains. I know very select few people who can do that. And so again, the mentality is what separates amateurs from pros, and all those little details, the word choices, the habits every day. Are you sending 28 questions to your coach, but none of them actually pertain to like the goal at hand? Meaning, are you asking a million questions on like what shows you should be picking instead of like, and you're not at the same time, you're not hitting your macros and you're just like adjusting the plan at how you see fit. So there's a lot of things that, people that really want to be pro athletes, they just won't do that. You know what I mean? The amateurs, I have a little bit of a hard time, like sometimes getting to a point where they're just like relinquishing control, executing a plan. Pros sometimes they understand you don't need adjustments every time you check in. Amateurs will be like standing by for anything you want to change. It's like, well, you look tighter today. We're seeing more definition in these areas. We have some mental wins that I'm seeing you notice here. We're going to take the whole don't fix what isn't broke approach right now, and we're going to stay the course. Amateurs are always looking for like you to eventually get to that point where you're like sprinkling in the magic fairy dust that's going to make them change. Pros will sit there, or I'm not just saying pro athletes, but people with a pro mentality, period.
Yes. Will
be able to say, I can just execute this plan consistently week after week as long as I have to until the coach feels it's okay to change and when we need to change. So it's all just those mental things.
No, I'm really glad that you pointed that out. And I'm going to add to this that I didn't always have the mentality that I have now. And
right.
So if you're listening and you're like stuck in a lot of those really common amateur thoughts, and they are amateur thoughts because you're new to the sport, genuinely, that's pretty much what causes it. I mean, you're entering this sport that's like hyper focused on your body, judgment,
right,
building all these things. So like, I get where people are coming from, but I want to assure, and I know you would do the same thing because you've come a long way as you shared, but like, You can change your mindset. You can change your mentality.
100%.
And I think the point here that's being made is, as you're committed to your nutrition, your training, your trust in your coach in the process, also commit to your mentality.
Exactly. Train your mental muscles just as hard, if not harder, than your physical ones. If you can do 120 minutes of cardio like some girls do for their prep, like you can set some mental goals each day. You can take 5 minutes
100%.
to journal, right? You can look at yourself in the mirror and say 5 things you like about yourself and take the time to do that. So
exactly. Yes. That's why I like working with competitors too, because they will do that. They will make the time and they'll find the way to do that. If they do want to see their mental growth occur and can work through any objections to that, then yes, they will find the way to do it. Because something that's a big pet peeve of mine is and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, because I know there's a lot that goes into it, but if I suggest to someone I'm working with to try something new for their mindset, and they drag on it, whatever, the problem persists, and I cannot do the work for them. I can help them become the person who sees the value in doing the work, but I can't do the work. But then it bothers me when it's like, oh, I just got like a new macro drop, or I decided to start up with my coach who just gave me all this extra cardio. I'm so excited. It's like, that is the problem. You're more committed to getting to a physical result. Your mind's not going to sustain that. So no matter how exciting it is to do that extra 10, 20 minutes of cardio, or how exciting it is to talk about show plans with your coach, until your mindset is ready for that, it's benign. Why even bother?
Yep. Something my dance instructor, and he was a principal dancer. That was my first love for performing was ballet. And he was from Japan. His name is Kwong. And he always would say to me, because again, I was not always who I was either. So that's like, I was like, very loud and noisy in my brain as a kid and in high school. And that showed in my dancing. And whether I said anything or I didn't say anything at all, Kwong one day pulled me aside and he looked at me and he said, "You're not able to do this because you're not able to control this." And he pointed to his head. And he said, "Until you're able to control this," and he pointed to his head, he goes, "This," and he pointed to my body. He's like, "will not follow." So the point is, like, if you're not working just as hard on your mindset as you are your physical part, I don't really care how much cardio you're doing or how much you're tracking your macros. If your body follows your mindset.
Yes. Period.
Boom, mic drop.
I love it. We're on this big soapbox right now, me and you. We are not stepping down.
I knew that this was going to be, I'm like, oh no, we're going to get two people who love mindset talking. Here we go.
We're getting preachy over here. Well, at least we practice it too, so we're a bit more credible.
Oh yeah. And in fact, like anyone who's ever talked to me and stuff, it's like, or heard a I've only been on one podcast so far, and then I have yours that's like some that aren't out yet, right? And it's like, it's just funny to hear that like people think that I'm very much like I'm who they expected. They're like, yeah, this is kind of like what I thought.
That's awesome. That is one of my favorite things, is not just virtually, but when I meet people in person and I'm like, you are the same. Like this is because if I can connect with someone virtually and then I meet them in person and I'm like, wait, you're not the same. That's really scary, because then you're like, well, I'm the same. You liked me virtually, but you're not the same. We have a little bit of a misalignment here, but no, you really are. It's really cool. You're a great person. And I'm so happy that you've shared so much of your insights and experience with us today. It's been just awesome. And I'd love if you could leave us with your best advice for girls who are thinking about competing but haven't, and then your best advice for those on their road to pro.
So my best advice for a girl who is thinking about competing or just about to step on stage for the first time is research your craft. If this is something you want to do, then research and study your craft. A musician studies his craft, right? A carpenter studies his craft. So whether it's a job or a sport you're interested in, this is one of those sports that studying your craft is an investment that you will absolutely never regret. And so I think that that's something, to look into if you're looking to do this for the first time. And then if you're looking to turn pro and you're on your road to pro, this is when I'm going to stick to my guns here and remove all your timelines, all of them. Focus on becoming the best you that you can be on and off stage, and you will be an even better pro. And enjoy the process, because too much we focus on, again, counting the weeks or just waiting for show day to happen. And then before you know it, it's gone. And there will never be that show day and that prep again. So live in the moment and don't be on a rush to turn pro. Just be in a rush to be your best you. And that again, will be an investment you won't regret.
Beautiful advice. I really, really love that and appreciate you sharing that, driving that point home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want other people to be able to reach out to you and maybe even inquire about coaching as well. So can you let everybody know how they can do that?
Sure. So my Instagram is Jonelle Warner, IFBB Pro, and my email is also Jonelle@teambossbodies.com. So either one of those ways you can reach out to me. And I love to follow other people back. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, nah, I'm not going to follow you. No, like, you follow me and interact with me, like, we're going to be friends. So you can reach out in any way, shape, or form, or even if it's just talk, I'm cool with that too. There's never like an obligation to sign up with me as an athlete. But if it's just to connect, like, I'm all for it.
Awesome. Love that about you. You're very genuine.
I try. Try to be.
Yes, you don't even have to. You are. And I want to make a comment before we wrap this up. You mentioned in a post that you wanted to be a role model. Like, when you won your pro card, you really thought, how can I be a role model? And I want to just say, I think you're doing an excellent job of that. And I'm really glad that me and you connected. And I think I'm hopeful that all of you listening really enjoyed this episode too. Of course, tag us as you listen or after with your main takeaways or what you liked. And yeah, I thought this was awesome and just appreciate your time.
I appreciate you saying that. That's like the best compliment anyone can give me. Physique compliments go so far, but, to hear that I'm genuine in any way is like a huge compliment to me. So I appreciate you having me on and just conversing with me. I knew we were going to vibe.
I know, it's awesome. Well, I'm going to say thank you all for listening. Really appreciate you tuning in. It's been awesome. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.